Drustin surveyed the route ahead. Large oak planks stretched from the gorse-covered banks into the misty heart of the loch. Wide enough for 3 men, its path ran straight as it gradually rose to a height of 15 feet above the gently lapping grey waters below, held up by finely rounded logs. Age had taken its toll. It had once been a resplendent bridge, finely carved and set into the bed of the loch below. Now it was replete with broken and missing boards, its posts bent one way or another. Peering through the gaps, Drustin's gaze fell upon what lay underneath. A short burst of air exhaled from his large but handsome nose. Jagged spikes, made of cold iron, broke the surface of the loch. The sharp, hungry teeth followed the underside of the walkway in row upon row, though placed irregularly. Some way ahead, Drustin could see the oozing remains of a corpse pinned by the metal shafts. Limply it lolled, wave and wind unable to dislodge the bloody flesh, broken by sharp metal. Scarlet mingled with dull grey, bronze tendrils spreading from their source of origination as the life of the man seeped away into the depths below. Taut sinews quivered as strength coursed through body and mind. Breathing deeply and slowly, Drustin laid a foot onto the walkway. Toe, ball and heel tested themselves gently upon the oak plank. It did not give, nor did it creak, though that may have been due to the warrior's lightness of foot rather than the plank's stability. He began to plant his white leather boot more firmly as he judged whether it would hold his weight, though retaining a readiness to leap backwards should it fail him. Eventually, his foot with fullness descended onto the long trampled board. Relief. The challenge of the first step had been overcome. Toe, ball and heel. Toe, ball and heel. So Drustin crept his way along the perilous causeway. He could hear his heart thumping in the silence of the vale. There was no birdsong in that pale gloom. It was a dead place, its stillness only ruptured by the occasional groan of wooden boards unused to holding a man on their backs. But Drustin made them do so, so long as they could bear it. He had to reach the end point of the walkway. Toe, ball and heel. Toe, ball and heel. Toe, ball and... Wait. Here is a plank that is bending. It yelps in pain. Withdraw the foot. Find another route. Toe, ball and heel. Toe, ball and heel. 1 hour passed. A second followed. Drustin dared not move too fast, lest his step be fatal. He was a tall man compared to most. He wrapped a lean muscularity in a woolen tunic dyed orange. Lined with threads of yellow, it was without blemish. Upon his shoulders he bore an immaculate cloak, also made of sheep's wool, that was blindingly white in colour and clasped at the neck by a brooch in the shape of a golden star. Around his waist was a silver belt carrying a short, curved dagger, the hilt of which was encrusted with orange gemstones. His mahogany hair was wild, though drawn into several buns proceeding down the midpoint of his head. Sapphire eyes sparkled in a hard, clean-shaven face, decorated with tight lips and a strong jaw, tense with the clenching of teeth. Still further the causeway carried on, rising to a height of 10 feet above the icy waters below. The fog grew thicker and thicker, until Drustin could barely see the planks in front of his feet. Legs ached with tension, concentration flagged, doubts rose. All he could trust was the rhythmic pattern that had seen him thus far. Toe, ball and heel. Toe, ball and heel. toe ball, and crack! Drustan cried out as his right foot plunged forward through the broken board. He tried to pull back, but it was too late. The downward momentum of his leg carried the rest of his body through the walkway. Large splinters raked his clothes as he hurtled through. Face first he swung, catching a glimpse of an iron shaft directly beneath him. Onwards it came, greedily rushing to meet him. For what seemed like an eternity, Drustan thought of Isolde. She was the one he loved, the one he was going to rescue, the lady who had saved his soul. He pictured her in his mind's eye. Dark golden locks flowed down over snow-white skin. Piercing lapis lazuli eyes stared out from her sharp-featured face. A silver band of twisted metal cords circled her delicate neck. Flowers were in her hair, and round her wrists, her slender body clothed in a silken gown of pink and blue. He adored that look of hers, imperious with a hint of mischief. The imaginary Isolde's lips parted into a great smile, a ray of sunshine that trickled through Drustan. That smile, oh so full of joy, quietened his inward tempest. The world melted around him. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else existed to him in that moment but the beautiful bursting smile beheld by his mind. With a sudden jolt, Drustan's fall was halted. His body swung round below him until his feet were in line with his head as the brooch dug deep into his windpipe. Can't breathe. He looked up. The white cloak he bore was torn, but a portion had become caught on the fractured beam above. It was straining against the weight it now bore. Drustan was hanging suspended above the razor spikes by the clasp around his neck. Can't breathe. Can't breathe. Air would not flow to Drustan's lungs. His legs began to twitch and kick, his arms rising up to the clasp on his neck. Pressure began to flood his head. The world around seemed to grow more distant and consumed by his need to breathe. Fingers groped and flailed as he writhed in desperation. Can't breathe. Can't breathe. Can't. Drustan's fingers flicked open the brooch. At once he fell, released from the cord that was strangling him. Sweet vitality rushed into him as he inhaled in a flurry of gasps. Renewed in spirit, he launched an arm upwards and grabbed. Nails dug into wall, jerking Drustan to a stop once more. Dangling below the walkway and above the spike, he took a moment to still his mind and his body. A deep breath in, a deep breath out. With the effects of his near death dissolving, he could now consider the challenge ahead of him. Ooh, you're in quite the pickle. Drustan whipped his head up towards the source of the small, lax voice. Peering through the hole left by the warrior's fall, perched a strange creature. About the size of a house cat, it had a prolonged torso bearing spindly arms and legs. Bright blue fur, tangled and matted, covered its jet-black skin, revealed on its face and palms. Its hindmost feet were clawed like a hawk's, while it had long, groping and apish hands for paws. A tail, longer than its body, whipped and flicked around as its oval-shaped eyes studied Drustan. Pointed ears atop its head twitched excitedly. A row of tiny sharp teeth glistened as they were licked by a violet forked tongue. The creature motioned at the cloak as it looked down at the helpless man. Better not wriggle, or snap, 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 and down you go, the creature hissed with glee. Drustan's body tensed. He held himself perfectly still. fire in his eyes. He stared at the blue beast with clenched teeth. Neither blinked, neither looked away. In the silence, the two engaged in a battle of wills. With its tail curling round excitedly, the creature began to speak once more. His tone was one of genuine sadness and delicious mockery. "Quite the predicament you find yourself in, Sword Hand of Kellywick. Cannot go forwards, cannot go backwards, cannot go downwards, cannot go upwards. Below lies an icy death," at which words the creature's lips unfurled into a grin. "But above promises an endless journey, wandering in a sea of cloud. Your quest is hanging by a thread or two." The creature was clearly amused at his witticism as he began to cackle maniacally while clicking his clingy fingers. "Such has been the condition of man in all seasons and times," retorted the gravelled voice of Drustan. "Yet, chattering goblin, I think that you know this and much, much more." "I am no goblin," shouted the creature, drawing himself tall, chest pumped up, face indignant, teeth bared. The mist seemed to swirl, the waves below grew rougher, the sky darker. Drustan kept his gaze fixed on his interlocutor for what seemed like a lifetime. With a deep breath, the creature's frown turned into a smile once more. The scene had returned to normal. "Ooh, he, well said, Drustan, son of Telorgan. Well said, well said." "How do you know me?" "I know many things, Thane of Mark. Many things long forgotten, and hidden in secret places. It is my blessing, and curse, to see a man and the tapestry of his life as one, to read the struggles and strifes of a tree in its bark, to witness the birth and the death of worlds in the shining light of a star. These eyes observe the past and discern the possible course within which your river will run. So, Trustan, son of Telorgan, I must now decide your fate in this place and time. For I am the keeper of records, the gatekeeper of the Isle of Glass. It is I alone who can open the way into the Garden of Apples. No thief can scale its walls, no ram can batter down its doors. The key belongs to me, because I am the key." "Riddles upon riddles," whispered Drustan. He looked at the creature with new respect, though he remained on his guard. "Guardian of the glass fortress, watcher of time, by what price will you let me pass within these walls?" With a sudden swipe of his blue-furred hand, the gatekeeper grabbed the cloak. He unhooked it from the wooden board and held it aloft in his clingy paw. Drustan was helpless as the creature began to lower his cloak towards the waters of the loch. Though small of stature, the gatekeeper held with ease Drustan's weight. The warrior felt as a babe. Nonetheless, he would not go to his death without a fight. Drustan kicked his legs back. Then, with all his power, he swung them forward. The cape slowly moved a few inches. As the warrior threw himself backwards, the cloak rocked with him. Again he launched onward, the fabric moving further than before. The gatekeeper kept lowering, but Drustan was swinging further and higher. Swing back, kick forward. Swing back, kick forward. Pain screamed through his biceps as the strain of holding on grew greater, but he gripped more tightly. A few more lunges, and his feet would touch the causeway once more. Swing back, kick forward. Swing back, kick forward. One more swing, murmured Drustin, straining with all his might to keep a hold of the cloak. Swiping his legs forward with venom, he propelled himself one last time. Onwards he rushed, hurtling down through the air. As he approached the midpoint, the turn in the arc that he would rise from, he prepared to thrust his legs upwards. As Drustin had been swinging a bun in a cape, the gatekeeper's demeanour had changed. At first, he watched the flailing warrior with bemusement, incredulous at the man's attempt to rescue himself from a hopeless situation. However, as Drustin began to rise, his eyes slowly narrowed, his smile faded, his nostrils flared. By the time the orange-clad man started his final ascent, the gatekeeper's face was aflame with rage. Drustin kicked upwards. The gatekeeper howled. It was long and piercing. The cloak went still. Drustin grabbed the cape more tightly, expecting to hurtle onwards with the momentum he had accrued. Except he didn't. His fingers did not tighten, and his body was motionless. It was not as if Drustin had hit an invisible wall, which would have been jarring. Instead, vitality had been drained from the man and his cloak. They were incapable of movement, unaffected by the elements, frozen in time. Drustin had no power or life in his chest and limbs. He only maintained control over his head, which turned upwards towards the gatekeeper in protest. Know this, gatekeeper of the island of glass. Nothing can stop me from my quest. Nothing at all. Upon the mount of Edin I did slay 300 wolfmen. I evaded the sorceries of black hags in the caves of Ninian. The tusked giant Yaspadaden fell to my blade. Tamed have I the serpents that haunt the westward seas. The champions of Klingsor have fallen beneath my dagger. All these and more stood in my way, and they are no more. So, gatekeeper, be assured that I will gain entry to the Garden of Apples. Nothing will stop me, not even you, whether I be live or dead. Strong words from a man dangling above a bed of spikes, powerless to move hand or foot, chortled the gatekeeper. But do not be deceived, Drustin's son of Talorgan. No stroke of force will compel me to open the way. He scratched the fur on his chin with his tail. I see the tapestries of men, beasts, birds, and trees. Their lives I know, from acorn and hatchling. But whether they are good or nay, I cannot determine by sight alone. A man must persuade me that his cause is righteous. Then he will find the gates unlocked to the Isle of Glass. You have earned the right to an audience, having survived the initial trial that I have set before you. Speak your case, Drustin, son of Talorgan. Drustin inhaled deeply. He closed his eyes and thought of Isolde. Her smile calmed him. His purpose was clear. Looking up at the gatekeeper, Drustin cleared his throat. My cause is greater than any other. My beloved, Isolde, has been taken against her will. Melvas, priest-king of Anfuin, took my lady from the court of Kellywick, where I reside as sword-hand to my liege lord Mark. With much toil and travail, I scoured the land for my quarry. Day and night I did not rest. Battered by rain, sleet, and hail, I ploughed through forest, glade, and moor. Seasons passed, and yet I wandered the lonely wastes in search of her. Ever on I strode until I met an ancient hermit at the Well of Weary. Within its waters he did scry Melvas and Isolde in the isle that you guard so preciously. Renewed in vigour, I strode forth once more. Battling the monsters of the world, I looked for the secret realm, seeking signs in the mountain fortress and the caverns below. Through many trials I have made my way across this land, until I found this causeway, the path to my one true love. All this I know, sword hand of Kellywig. Aye, that you do, keeper of records, watcher of time. Yet I ken that you do not discern the reason for my actions. Why did I traverse through brook and glen? Why contest with demons foul and fair? Why my labours in this life or the next? Justin paused to let the immensity of his questions make their impact upon his audience. The gatekeeper remained unmoved. With a sigh, a smile spread across Justin's weary face. I love her, gatekeeper. I love Isolde with all my heart. There is nothing in this world that I would change or exchange for her. Even if you offered all the riches in the mines of Traprain and Strathmore, the 7 crowns of the 7 emperors, and the worship of 1,000,000 faithful souls, yet still I would not give her up. I would rather die than be without her, and even in death I would search for her. For in Isolde I find my joy. In Isolde I am made whole. As Justin said these things, he had a faraway look, as if his mind was in some place else. Then his attention returned. With steel in his voice, he declared, "Thus I come to be with her. Then I seek to rescue my lady. At last I shall avenge myself upon Melvas, who dared to separate my lover and I." "I fear your love would destroy all in its path, sword hand," the gatekeeper replied in a mournful tone. His pointy ears had begun to droop. "This is so. It is a storm casting aside all that stands before it, even that which has a strong foundation, for all is as shadow compared to Isolde, including the oaths you made to your liege lord." The gatekeeper's response stung Justin. He looked away with a pained expression. Slowly he spoke, a single tear crawling down his bare cheek. "Aye, Mark I loved, as a son loves a father. He raised me in his household. My kinsman taught me how to strike with the sword, to release the arrow and to cleave with the axe. The thrill of the hunt, the carnage of battle, the wiles of womenfolk, these he taught me from morn till night. As I came of age, he made me a thane of his court. Service I rendered as was his due, and more. To isles of west I led his horde, reaping what we did not sow by the blade and spear. Keep after keep surrendered to my mastery, until we reached the capital of Tara. There the king of that people sent forth a champion, Finn McCool, to do war for the fate of the people. Seized by a maddening spirit, I challenged him to single combat, whereupon man and man exerted mind and muscle for the sake of glory. In bloody action I felled this hero of Hibernia. I claimed the land and her people for my liege lord Mark. To secure his supremacy over this rebellious people, Mark wanted to marry the daughter of the king. This was Isolde, the very same who tended my wounds with herbs and ointments, though I had slain her betrothed in single combat. Though destined to be a bride brought forth from war for Mark, no fetter could bind the affection that grew between us as we sailed home to Kellywig. Hours of merriment, laughter, dancing. We played chess and sang poems in praise of one another. By the time we had returned to my liege lord's keep, I was devoted to my lady, and in secret tryst we made good our union in the cover of darkness. The gatekeeper laughed incredulously. You cuckolded your master, bringing dishonour and shame to your house and to his, and you expect me to let you into the castle of the glass? Man and woman may be married in law, but true union is only found in the lover's embrace. Isolde was a prize of war, joined to Mark for political expediency. She bore him no love, not least because he had not won her with his own hand, but by mine. Frail of body is he, a withered sword arm he was bequeathed in the fires of war. He saw contempt in her glance during unguarded moments, and long he resented her for it. Held together for the sake of imperial ambition, there was a mutual hatred between the pair. Their marriage was a sham. In truth, it was I, who Mark in time feared and envied, who was yoked to Isolde. It is not for nothing that I have sought her across the land, while Mark remains hidden in his bedchamber, quivering behind the walls of Kellerwick. Anger swept across Drustin as he pictured Mark, his liege lord, sleeping comfortably next to a roaring fire in a darkened hall. Why would your liege lord pursue a quarry that he was bound to by contract to exchange for a castle built? Did he not promise the Druid king the gift of Isolde, if he would but use secret incantations to summon a troop of goblins to build him the finest hall in Albion? That he did. Drustin did not like this line of questioning. And why should he have done any other? Due to their estrangement, Mark never consummated his marriage to Isolde. He did not sail a wife. He traded an unmarried woman who found him repulsive. More than that, warrior of Kellerwick, the cuckold saw the looks you and she gave one another. In the watches of the night, he crept through castle gardens in search of answers until, on one occasion, he did espy the two of you embraced in a lover's kiss. In horror he fled, and bitter malice grew in his festering soul. Cold, cold, cold he dealt with her, but hot with you. She was reduced, a mere trinket in his eyes, that could be used to attain a fairer bargain. Yet his kinsman, the boy he had loved as his own, had aroused in him a molten fire. For you had betrayed him, your own flesh and blood. Though he is feeble of body and weak of will, shrewd is his mind, and violence rules his heart. He wounded you. He wounded you. He wounded you more deeply than any blade can pierce, for he sundered you and your beloved. Mark may have had just cause to send Isolde away from his court. He may even have the right to break my body and soul as a punishment for my adultery, Drustin replied grudgingly. Nevertheless, the deal he made with Melvas was dark and wicked. At the Well Aweary, the hermit Lailacan foresaw what the Druid king would do with my beloved. Upon the stone of destiny, at the heart of the garden of apples, he will plunge a knife into Isolde's soft bosom. Drustin paused for a moment, overcome by emotion. I believe Mark knew this when he sold her to Melvas. He knew the doom she faced, or at least guessed of it. He heard her cries as she was told her fate. He filled my cup with poison, so that I would slumber when she was taken. He watched on as ruffians carried her away on large jet-black horses. He kept me in chains, forged by the spells of Melvas, so that I would not chase after her. But the power of love cannot be overcome, roared Drustin. So long as I live, I will not let cold steel pierce her breast. Dang, dang, dangling Drustin. The hermit speaks true, though he did not reveal all. The gatekeeper stroked his tail with a clingy paw. His words were filled with sadness. Ooh, hee. Did Lailukin tell you why Melvas planned to sacrifice your beloved in the castle of glass? He did not, gatekeeper. Then I shall enlighten you. In the garden of apples, worlds collide, for it is the origin of them all. The roots of the ash tree sink down into the realms of the dead, where poor souls find their final resting place. On its branches sprouted many lands, including the realms of Mark and the Isle of Albion. There are other places, beyond what can be reached by horse or hawk, that have grown from the ash tree. Each is an apple, and the apple of this world is rotting. In your love-induced stupor, you have been blind to the barren waste that Albion has become. Kings such as Mark are lesser men, failing in body and mind. Their lands, once fruitful and bountiful, have become deserts. Brothers fight brothers, fathers slay sons, daughters murders mother. The poor are robbed by the rich, the Lord of Stars is forgotten, invaders wait at the door. The beings of other apples, apples, are watching, Drustin, and they are hungry for what's left of this forsaken realm. The gatekeeper paused. His tail had stopped swishing. With a look of sympathy, he continued on. It is foretold that upon the stone of destiny, set before the ash tree, the world can be reborn through the blood of a princess maiden from the Western Isle. Just as the tree gains nourishment from its roots, so the land of the living feeds on the underworld. Her death will bring new life to your dying world. Her sacrifice will allow men to retain rule over their kingdoms. The invaders from other realms shall be repelled. Thus, Melvas seeks to strike Iseult, and so through her restore this failing patch of earth. Though terrible is the deed, the cause is just. Drustin gazed out across the waters of the loch. The waves lapped below. The breeze rustled his hair. Light grey clouds drifted across a cold blue sky. He stared into the mists hovering ahead. He remembered places and times past. Kellywick, the market traders bustling in the streets while the bells chimed and pretty girls threw flowers in the air. Rolling woodlands, squirrels and robins playing in the auburn leaves. Sea spray flecking stubbled cheeks as the prow of the ship trammels the waves. Cold, damp caves filled with gold, gems and treasure. Finn McCool sinks to his knees, a spear lodged in his chest. Drustin closed his eyes. Iseult, smiling. Drustin turned once more to his interlocutor. His heart was resolved. He knew his course. I told you once before, gatekeeper, that there is nothing in this world that I would trade for Iseult. It is all as dust compared to her. I would let this land die. I would let the garden of apples fall into nothingness. I would cut down the ash tree and throw it into the fires of the void before I let her go. Begone with life, begone with death, There is only the love shared between Isolde and I. Everything else can burn." The gatekeeper gazed with wonder at the warrior before him. For several seconds he sat in silence, mouth ajar and tongue flicking. With a sudden change he hissed, "These are the words of a knave who would break the wheel of fortune for a woman. Drustan, sword hand of Kellywick, your cause is unjust and unnatural. I see no reason to let you enter the island of glass, to which you will surely bring destruction." At once Drustan felt life return to his limbs. The gatekeeper began to lower the cloak once more. Tail whipping to and fro, he readied himself to let the cape go. As he descended, Drustan cried out in desperation, "Watcher of time, your knowledge is great, but you would know my quest is righteous if you but felt my love for her." "This I cannot do, child." "Nay, there is a way." At once, Drustan opened his lips and began to sing. He had a pure voice, that within the tenor range. His song was bursting with desire. The tune rose in a series of arcs, each one filled with longing and joy intertwined. Higher and higher the melody rose, until, in ecstasy, absolute delight trickled down as a waterfall, before rising out of the ocean like a dolphin leaping high. Down and up, the tune flew. Faster and faster its tempo grew. Soaring notes filled the air. Drustan's lungs gave their all as his soul poured itself out in the fairest of melodies. The gatekeeper's ears twitched with excitement. On the wind, a faint sound could be heard. It was a woman's voice, strong and pure. Far in the distance was its source. It was singing the same song as Drustan. It rose and fell in harmony with him, the two voices united and distinct, bound but not consumed by the other. Together their parts danced in pitch and rhythm, yearning for one another across their separation in time and space. The gatekeeper was moved. He felt their loss and their sorrow at being parted. He experienced their yearning, their seeking, their hoping. He longed for their love, for the thrill they had in each other's arms. Their song echoed in his heart. Tears welled up. He had never cried before. As the song drew towards its ending, the female voice gradually dwindled. Drustan was spent. He had no more to give. Last notes, filled with peaceful acceptance, lingered on until there was silence. All was still except Drustan, who swayed gently in the breeze. Finally, the gatekeeper spoke. He did so gravely. "You may enter, child." As he said so, the creature pulled the cloak up. Drustan ascended to the causeway. At the right moment, he reached out with one hand to the wooden planks above him and, when sure that it would hold him, let go of the cape. He then pulled himself up. He expected to see the gatekeeper, but the creature was gone. The mists had rolled back. Before him was a great gate, 10 yards high, made of stained glass. Images were upon it, depicting stories of heroes from long ago. It was set in a crystal wall that was studded with gems shaped like fruits. The walls rose out of a lake, encircling a small island. The doors were open. Inside was a grassy path, lined with flowers of every shape and colour. Trustan drew his dagger. He stepped over the threshold and proceeded into the island of glass, the garden of apples, the beginning of worlds, where his beloved Isolde was awaiting him.